Greetings, everybody. Redbeard here for another edition of the Rasslin with Redbeard midweek update. Appreciate you guys tuning in. I know we were gone last week as I was on vacation. I do enjoy talking to you guys, but I don't enjoy talking to you enough to give up on a trip to Myrtle Beach, South Carolina to record this. So appreciate you guys continuing on, and hopefully we can continue to have some momentum in putting out this program on a weekly basis. I wanted to get started with trying to wrap up and catch up on a few things because of the fact we've missed a lot. You miss a lot in this business by being gone for a day. We've been gone for almost a week and a half. So I want to start by mentioning the fact that we've lost two legends here within the past week. Of course, the news rolled out not too long after we were gone from the previous midweek update broadcast in regard to the fact that the American Dream Dusty Rhodes had passed away. That was a tremendous loss, not only to the business but also to WWE Developmental, as he was continuously part of that brand almost from the beginning of the NXT product being brought out. He was a legend in the ring, of course, and I'm not going to try and speak any more eloquently than that because of the fact that we're now more than a week removed from his passing, and about everything that's going to be said about that man has already been said by people who are much more better at talking about that sort of thing than I am. So I'll just leave off my comments there and also share my condolences to his family. He was a family man, loved his boys, and loved his business. Unfortunately, here in the past couple of days, we've also lost the Nature Boy Buddy Landel. Some people refer to him as the other Nature Boy, but Buddy was known for having been an example of someone who didn't quite live up to expectations. Had a good career, made a lot of progress in terms of establishing himself, but never quite could become the star that a lot of people thought he would be. So, regardless, tragic passing, and that he was in his mid-50s. That's way too young. I can say that as a person who's approaching 35. Mid-50s doesn't seem that far away anymore. When I was 18, 19 years old, that was a lifetime, of course. Now it's not that far, so he was much too young to have passed. So we do send our condolences out to those folks and their families, and just hate to hear that type of thing, but such is the way of all life, unfortunately. So next up, we want to talk about some things in regard to what's been happening in the more broad sense of wrestling here recently. You've had the debut of Global Force Wrestling in terms of their live events. They have taken a bit of an interesting tactic in terms of using baseball stadiums as their venues for many of these events. Actually, all of these events so far. Jeff Jarrett has previous relationships with various members of Major League Baseball and Minor League Baseball, and it seems like that's been what has been the inspiration behind doing this type of thing. Personally speaking, I was not sure that it was going to be a success, and if you look at the photos that have been released from these particular events, they're not doing too hot in terms of ticket sales. There are people there, but they're not full by any stretch of the imagination. That's a combination, in my opinion, of the booking and also just the fact that the talent that's on these shows is not the kind of thing that people are going to want to come out in droves to see, unfortunately. Not in the areas that they're booking them anyway. They're doing shows in like the Midwest, Tennessee, Indiana, areas like that. They're much more rural, and typically speaking, when you've got a combination of talent that are more known to smart indie crowds, that's not the type of thing that they're going to come out to see in an area like that. It doesn't work here in South Carolina much either, unfortunately. North Carolina's kind of growing in that respect, but it's just not something that people are going to come out to see because they don't know who, for example, a Jigsaw is, or an Andrew Everett, or PJ Black, or Trent Beretta. Any of those names there, they've not really heard of, so they're not going to be able to say, oh, well, I can go drop $12 per ticket or how much ever they are and go see a show and feel like I got my money's worth. It just doesn't work that way necessarily. The booking has been a little suspect as well because they've been touting this roster, guys like Young Bucks and various other members of Bullet Club, this, that, and the other, and they're not on the shows. The talent that is there is fully capable. They're names that have been used in other promotions, TNA and whatnot, Ring of Honor, but people just don't seem to want to see it. So we'll see how that goes in the future for them. Right now, to see those pictures, it's kind of depressing, to be honest with you, but they're still growing, they're on their feet, they're moving forward. Hopefully it'll make some progress and they'll be able to get to a point to where people are actually coming out in larger numbers for the events. Last night we had the debut of Tough Enough on the USA Network. This is the 2015 season. That's been a bit of a departure from what they've done in previous seasons, not only in terms of the overall gimmick and presentation, but also in how they seem to be presenting the show. One thing that kind of caught me off guard was that they had a couple of training montages in there and some challenges that the contestants were faced with, but by and large this felt very much like Real World meets WWE, which was not what I was expecting. I was expecting more of a, I don't know, for some reason I had it in my mind they were going to do a little bit more in showing off what they were going to be actually involved with day to day at the Performance Center, but not so much. It is what it is, though. It's going to be interesting to see how this season pans out, because there have already been a couple of people on that show who have shown themselves to be what may or may not be a ringer. There's a gentleman on the show who's named Patrick. I don't remember his last name, but I was browsing Twitter last night, and apparently he's a talent who's been trained at Maryland Championship Wrestling, so it looks like Patrick might be one of the guys they got sort of in line as a fallback option. But what was impressive to me is that Tanner, the gentleman from Boiling Springs, South Carolina, made a big showing for himself in the physical challenges. He's an MMA fighter by trade, and it seems as though he's got the majority of those guys whooped, for lack of a better term, when it comes to cardiovascular. So Tanner made a good showing. He's also running his mouth a lot, which it kind of makes him a combination of things in that you've got a very athletic young man, but you've got someone that will hopefully keep their mouth shut when they need to, and make progress and hopefully do some good things on the show. So we'll have to see how that works out for them. The ladies on the show, you've got more or less just a total divas cast there, already in the making from the way they were going around and back and forth with each other. So the entertaining program, sure, but I was a little surprised in that it was a very real worldish type presentation last night. And wasn't all that thrilled by Chris Jericho's performance. If you watched the follow-up program there, The Miz was actually, I thought, much more well suited to doing the hosting duties. Jericho just kind of seemed like he was there for being there, for lack of a better phrase. So, but it was the first show. They can definitely make progress from here on out in terms of continuing to flesh out that show overall and broadening what they're going to be offering in terms of showing more behind the scenes stuff from the Performance Center. And I'll definitely be tuning in again to see how that progresses. Moving on from there, there were a couple of interesting articles published by PW Insider and other news outlets here in the past couple of days in regard to some apparent interest on the part of WWE in some independent talent, and not necessarily independent talent, but guys who are currently with Ring of Honor, and also a recently departed TNA name, that being none other than Gunner, which in some cases around this part of the world people still know him better as Phil Shatter. The Ring of Honor talent they were interested in was Jay Lethal, Adam Cole, and I think a few others were involved there as well, but I can't remember them off the top of my head. But the interesting part there is that you've got a former TNA talent apparently with some interest from WWE and being signed, that being Gunner. Gunner, of course, at one point in his life did have a developmental deal with WWE. Didn't pan out for him at that point, but sometimes time away and experience is good for people. So it may be that he gets another opportunity here with them. The other thing, though, is the fact that Jay Lethal is apparently one of the people they're interested in. Of course, Jay, if you've been following Ring of Honor at all, just recently won the ROH World Title. So there you have an example of a guy who's definitely got some attention, who's had at least a decade in the business, and who's obviously talented, who might be getting an opportunity here to go forward. And it'll be interesting to see how the relationship pans out there between him and Ring of Honor and WWE, if this goes anywhere. A lot of these articles, they can be total hogwash, or they could be 100% valid. So again, we'll keep an eye on that and see how it progresses. In terms of local stuff, Within the past week and a half here, it was announced that Global Force Wrestling and America's Most Liked Wrestling up in Winston-Salem had formed some type of an alliance. Don't quite know what that's going to be about yet. They've really only said so far that they have an agreement. I don't know what that will entail. It could be that they have some type of a promotion to where they maybe share talent, have a AML versus GFW type of thing. Of course, Sonjay Dutt is involved with both promotions. Sonjay is an old hand from TNA, and he's one of the original members of the X Division. So maybe they'll have something going on there, but it remains to be seen what exactly that's going to wind up being. It's a concept that would be neat, I think, to have that AML versus GFW type of thing going on, but here again, there's been no details actually announced, so we'll have to wait and see what that winds up being. In regard to another show that's coming up here soon, PWX has announced that their July 12th event will be called Superkick World, in relation to the fact that the Young Bucks will be making their return appearance for the promotion. They'll be taking on the Revolt during that show. The Revolt is a stable formed by Zane Riley and Caleb Conley. Very entertaining group. I think that'll be a good match. I think that'll probably be a strong show overall, because this is also PWX's return to the Cabarrus Arena, which is not too far from Concord, North Carolina. May or may not be able to make it to that show. Hoping to get up to one in North Carolina in July for some coverage there, but we'll have to wait and see what goes on there as far as my schedule is concerned. But again, that's July 12th. PWX presenting Superkick World featuring the Young Bucks. One quick other note that I'll add in here is the fact that there's been a cancellation in regard to one of the events that was supposed to be happening here this weekend. The show that was going to be run by American Pro Wrestling Alliance and Wrestle One in Shelby, North Carolina, was canceled. That was going to be set for June 27th, this coming Saturday. They announced this to the surprise, I think, of a lot of people here locally, because the Wrestle One promotion that they were working with on that is a promotion in Japan that Great Muta is associated with. It's actually his promotion, and Muta was going to be on the shows. I think that was the attraction that people had there, that Muta was going to be there, because he doesn't do a whole lot in the United States, period. But at any rate, that show's been canceled. There was no return date scheduled. So if you had tickets in advance, I assume that they'll be refunded to you. But yeah, kind of disappointing to see that go away, because I was planning on going to that show. But regardless, let's go ahead now and do our normal rundown of what's coming up this weekend in terms of shows happening in and around the Carolinas. Alright folks, there you have it. Our wrap up of the events that are coming this weekend. We appreciate you guys tuning in and for following along with us. If you are a promoter or wrestler or in some way affiliated with a promotion that's in this part of the world, we would be glad to have your material on the program here. If you don't see your poster featured, that's because we didn't know your show was happening. If you would be so kind as to drop us a note via Facebook, Twitter, or whatever is more convenient for you, we'd be glad to share your poster both here on the program and also on our Facebook page in the upcoming events posters album that we have there. Be glad for you guys to also give us a like and subscribe here on YouTube. That lets us know that we're reaching people and that we're doing the right thing in terms of trying to spread as much information as we can to the masses about local wrestling here in the Carolinas. We appreciate you guys tuning in, and we'll see you at the matches.